Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to turn complex source material into, well, clarity and hopefully some actionable insight for you.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're embarking on quite a mission, actually. The really intellectual journey tracing the path from, say, a soldier's snap decision on the ground,
Yeah, under incredible pressure.
all the way up to the kind of strategic thinking that happens around the cabinet table. It's a huge span.
It really is. And the source materials we've been digging into, they're from military command courses, and they really force you to wrestle with this fundamental paradox.
It is.
Well, how does that split-second choice, maybe an ethical one made in a high-altitude foxhole, how does that actually translate cleanly and logically into a strategic signal, a diplomatic message even?
That's the core of it, isn't it? That's the architecture we're trying to map out today. Our sources, they seem to push this unified theory of command.
They do.
And they argue pretty strongly that modern military success, it's not just about having the best tech or the most firepower anymore.
Not at all. It hinges almost completely, they say, on superior cognitive skills. Things like judgment, adaptability, critical thinking.
Exercised across all those levels: tactical, operational, and strategic.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to synthesize these three layers. We want to show how that fluid judgment, that adaptive reasoning, how it's basically replaced just following orders by rote.
Right, it's the decisive factor now. And we'll be focusing quite a bit on something the sources flag as critical for the future. This difference between just being digitally fluent and having epistemic fluency.
That's a key distinction we need to unpack.
Okay, let's start this journey then, right at the foundation, ground level, what the doctrine calls tactical art.
Yeah, tactical art, it's everything really. The bedrock. If things go wrong here, the whole campaign structure can just crumble.
So it's not just about winning the firefight.
No, modern doctrine defines it much more broadly. It's about applying judgment under complexity. And this is happening at the lowest levels, company and battalion command. It's way beyond just ticking boxes on a checklist.
So you're talking about that company commander, maybe, who's trying to execute an order, but at the same time, they're juggling maybe half a dozen conflicting factors.
Precisely. They're navigating what the doctrine calls the METTC variables.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. It's mission, enemy, terrain, troops available, time available, and the really crucial one, civil considerations.
Ah, the TC. That feels like the big shift.
It is. It's a philosophical shift, acknowledging that in today's conflicts, the human terrain, the political environment, it's just as vital as the physical landscape. You ignore it at your peril.
And including that just completely changes the math for a commander, doesn't it? Older models were mostly about maneuver, fire support.
Betting rounds on target.
But now that commander, they almost have to be a local diplomat, an ethical judge, right there on the spot.
That's a great way to put it. And this complexity, it means they absolutely have to understand the nested linkage of intent.
Nested linkage of intent, meaning?
Meaning a commander can't just get an order like secure Hill 400. They need to grasp why. Why Hill 400? Is it to protect a convoy route? Is it to deny the enemy observation down into the valley? Or is it maybe setting the stage for the division's main attack 2 days from now?
Because if they don't get that why,
Yeah.
if they misunderstand the bigger picture, the divisional or core intent,
They risk achieving what the sources call isolated, irrelevant tactical victories. They might take Hill 400 perfectly, textbook assault,
mission accomplished, technically.
technically, but if taking it burns through too much ammo or delays the whole brigade's advance by 6 hours, they've essentially failed the broader campaign, even while winning their specific fight.
So the critical thinking question shifts. It's not, what am I told to do?
It's, why does this need to be done now, and how does it actually contribute to the overall policy goal? That clarity of purpose is everything for precision and action. Without it, commanders just fall back on doing things by the book, which is the exact opposite of tactical art. #tagged #1.2 judgment across extreme tactical environments.
Okay, let's see how this idea of disciplined judgment actually works in some really tough environments, starting with counterinsurgency, COION, and counterterrorism, CT. These seem like places where tactical actions have immediate, big strategic consequences.
Oh, absolutely. The feedback loop is incredibly tight, and the sources hammer home the main lesson from COION. It's fundamentally a political and psychological fight, a contest for legitimacy.
Which leads to that paradox you mentioned earlier.
Exactly, the central paradox. The more you protect the population, the less you need to fight the insurgents.
That really flips the script, doesn't it? away from enemy body counts towards how the civilians feel what they perceive.
It does, because if the insurgents are fighting for legitimacy, then any military action, even if it's completely justified, can be twisted by them into propaganda. Any collateral damage is a gift to their narrative.
So the tactical commander is really walking a tightrope. Their immediate job might be to take out an insurgent's cell.
Right, neutralize the threat.
But the bigger operational goal is protecting the population's belief that the government can keep them safe and is legitimate.
Precisely. And that's why tactical restraint becomes a combat multiplier. It's not just about avoiding civilian casualties, though that's critical. It's about using force surgically, making sure the political message sent is one of moral clarity, control, and legitimacy. Minimal force for maximum positive effect, you could say.
So how does the doctrine measure success then, if it's not territory held or insurgents killed?
Well, it changes the critical thinking. Questions commanders have to ask themselves. Questions like, why does protecting the population often achieve more long-term than just hunting insurgents? And how can using less force, showing restraint, actually strengthen our operational legitimacy?
And the answer seems to be about demonstrating that disciplined initiative.
It is. The assessment rubrics for COIN operations, they focus heavily on non-kinetic effects. Things like, is infrastructure being rebuilt? Are schools reopening? Is the local government functioning again? Are we engaging effectively with local security forces?
We actually have a really significant long-running example of this kind of non-kinetic effort, don't we? Operation Sadhavana in Jammu and Kashmir started way back in '98. That wasn't about combat sweeps.
No, Sadhavana is almost a perfect case study. It illustrates converting tactical presence into strategic influence purely through civic action. The military's there providing security, yes, but the main effort is building infrastructure, running schools and job training, providing medical care.
So the army effectively becomes a partner in state building. Fighting the root causes alienation, lack of opportunity, poor services, not just the symptoms, the insurgents themselves.
That's the idea. Under Sadhavana, a successful patrol isn't necessarily one that makes contact. Success is measured by the trust built with locals, the intelligence willingly shared because of that trust, the projects completed and sustained. Over time, this builds legitimacy and strategic influence, making the insurgents increasingly irrelevant because the population sees a better alternative.
Okay, let's shift gears dramatically. From the complexities of legitimacy to the harsh realities of physics, mountain warfare and high-altitude operations.
Yeah, completely different challenge. Up there, the environment itself is the primary adversary. The sources really stress the terrain, the extreme weather, the physiological toll on soldiers. It all combines to magnify friction massively.
Everything just gets harder and takes longer.
Exponentially harder. Every plan needs more buffer time. Every resupply mission is a major operation. Just moving takes huge amounts of energy.
And we're talking altitudes where human bodies just don't function well. People talk about altitude being a force multiplier.
But only if your force is properly acclimatized and equipped for it. Otherwise, it's a force divider, maybe even a deterrent. It works against you.
So what does the doctrine emphasize for operating effectively up there?
Two key things stand out. First, decentralized control is absolutely essential. The terrain creates isolation. Units get cut off. Communications are patchy. So junior leaders have to be empowered to make decisions on the spot within the commander's intent. Micromanagement is impossible and dangerous.
And the second?
Logistics. It's not just support. It's a core combat function. Getting food, fuel, ammo, even water to those high posts is incredibly difficult. Assets we might take for granted elsewhere, mules, specialized high-altitude helicopters, careful prepositioning of supplies, they become the decisive factors. Without them, the best soldiers can't fight.
The Kargil conflict in 1999 seems like the ultimate brutal test of these principles. The initial challenge looked almost insurmountable.
It was incredibly tough. Kargil really hammered home that the terrain absolutely dictates your tactics. You're often talking small team infiltrations, near vertical climbs under fire. But crucially, it also showed that leadership determines the outcome through adaptation. Well, the initial mindset might have leaned towards costly attritional assaults. But success came as commanders adapted, figuring out how to use limited artillery effectively in mountain valleys, how to sustain the troops, how to coordinate attacks across ridgelines. They had to master using the terrain itself as a weapon, realizing a small, well-placed post could pin down much larger forces, forcing them to find smarter, often indirect ways to dislodge the enemy rather than just banging their heads against the wall.
Okay, one more extreme environment. Urban operations, urban ops, and close quarters battle, VQB. Probably the most complex of all.
Definitely the most complex, I'd say. You've got incredible density. You've got extreme three-dimensionality fighting happening on rooftops, in basements and sewers, across streets, inside buildings, all at once.
And the unavoidable factor.
The pervasive presence of civilians everywhere. Non-combatants mixed in with combatants.
So the doctrine must stress something beyond just firepower and maneuver here.
It does. Success demands high tempo, incredible teamwork, strict tactical discipline, and above all, restraint. That word again.
And the sources pose that critical question. Why is a city both a force multiplier and a constraint for the military?
It's a multiplier because the dense buildings offer endless cover and concealment, favoring defenders but also attackers who know how to use it. But the constraint is the civilian population. Their presence fundamentally changes the rules.
How so? It alters the principles of war.
It has to. Principles like mass or concentration of force become incredibly dangerous if applied indiscriminately. An artillery barrage that might be acceptable in open country is unthinkable in a dense city block because the collateral damage, the civilian deaths, the destruction of critical infrastructure can instantly undermine the entire strategic and political objective of the campaign. Every tactical action echoes politically.
Which means assessing success in urban ops is different too. It can't just be about clearing buildings or eliminating threats.
Exactly. The assessment metrics specifically evaluate how well units integrate civil considerations. Are they protecting civilians? Are they preserving critical infrastructure like hospitals and power stations? The doctrine pushes hard away from overwhelming firepower towards precision, recognizing that in urban ops, restraint isn't weakness. It's the key to legitimacy and achieving sustainable long-term success.
Looking back across these three environments, coin, mountains, cities, they're so different physically. But the common thread seems to be this need for the commander's judgment, their ethical compass, their disciplined initiative.
That's the core synthesis, yes. The modern tactical commander has to internalize that ethical leadership and moral restraint aren't just nice-to-haves or limitations imposed from above. In the messy hybrid conflicts we face now, they are genuine force multipliers. Legitimacy itself is often the real center of gravity.
Okay, so if tactical art is about judgment in the execution of the fight, then operational art, that's the intellectual framework that actually guides the whole fight, right? This is the bit that connects tactics to the bigger strategic goals.
Precisely. It's the cognitive bridge. Operational art sits in that vital space between the high-level political strategy, what the nation wants to achieve, and the low-level tactical actions, how the troops fight on the ground.
It's about turning an abstract political goal into a concrete campaign plan.
Exactly. It's primarily an intellectual exercise. It visualizes how all those dispersed tactical actions, hundreds of them maybe, are going to converge over time and space to produce a desired strategic effect. It's about campaign design.
The sources we looked at break operational art down into 4 distinct but interconnected parts. It sounds less like a static checklist and more like a cycle, a learning process.
That's a good way to think of it. It's a methodology, a continuous loop. Operational art is the umbrella concept, the discipline itself, and these 4 constructs are the tools you use to apply it.
Okay, let's walk through them. What's the first one?
First is operational art itself, which they describe as the cognitive bridge. This is about the why. It's the mental framework the commander uses to really understand the political intent handed down and then visualize how tactical wins will add up to campaign success. It's deep understanding before committing forces.
Makes sense? Then what?
Second, the operational approach. This is the how. Once you understand the problem, the approach is the broad concept, the main idea for how you're going to employ your forces to get the job done. Are we going for attrition, a swift maneuver, an indirect approach focusing on logistics? Maybe diplomatic pressure is the main effort. It's the conceptual path.
Okay, so you have the why and the how. What's next?
Third, the operational framework. This gets into the where and when. It's the spatial and temporal structure. How do you arrange your forces in time and space to synchronize everything? This is where you see concepts like dividing the battle space into deep, close, and support areas.
Deep being shaping future battles, close being the decisive fight now, support being logistics and sustainment.
Right. It organizes the chaos. And finally, fourth, the operational process. This is the engine that drives adaptation. It's the continuous do, check, adjust cycle.
The feedback loop.
Exactly. It turns the design into action and makes sure you're learning and adapting as you go. This process has key steps. Understand the situation, visualize the desired end state and the path there, describe that vision clearly to subordinates, direct the action, and crucially, continuously assess progress and assumptions.
So art is the theory, approach is the concept, framework is the structure, and process keeps it adaptive. I can see how they all fit together. You need all four.
You really do. Without the art and approach, you might have brilliant execution of pointless tasks. Without the framework and process, you might have a great idea that just falls apart in execution or fails to adapt when reality bites.
And you mentioned the process emphasizes assessment and redesign, not just minor tweaks.
That's critical. The goal isn't just to check if the plan is on schedule. It's to constantly ask, is the underlying logic still valid? Has the situation changed fundamentally? Do we need to rethink our entire approach? It's about avoiding rigid adherence to a plan that's clearly failing. Hashtag 2.2 operational design and focusing effort.
Okay, so getting that design right seems paramount. The sources are really clear. Operational design has to start by framing the problem correctly. Get the problem wrong.
And the most brilliant solution is irrelevant or even counterproductive.
So how do commanders start? How do they frame the problem?
They begin by trying to understand the operational environment not just as a battlefield, but as a complex system. Doctrine provides a tool for this, the PMESI analysis.
Right, PMES. Let's quickly define those again.
Sure. P is political, who holds power, legitimacy, policy goals. M is military, enemy and friendly forces, capabilities, doctrine. E is economic, resources, funding, infrastructure resilience. S is social. Culture, religion, population demographics, grievances, cohesion. I is informational. Media, narratives, perceptions, cyber domain. And the final I is infrastructural, transportation, communications, energy, key facilities.
And the commander has to analyze how all these things interact.
Yes, and not just list them. They need to understand the current state, the relationships between them, and most importantly, identify the tensions, the vulnerabilities, the sources of instability within that system.
Because if you only look at the military M,
You miss huge opportunities. Maybe the enemy's real weakness isn't their army, but their fragile economy, or deep social divisions, S, or their dependence on a specific piece of infrastructure. Framing the problem solely in military terms leads to military-centric solutions that might completely miss the mark.
this systems analysis then leads to identifying the focus of the effort, the famous center of gravity, or COG. The sources define it as the source of the enemy's power or cohesion.
That's right. The thing that gives them their freedom of action, their strength, their will to fight. Identifying the correct COG is probably the single most important intellectual act in operational design.
And the sources stress,
Yeah.
it's almost never just a physical thing.
Almost never purely physical. That's a crucial CTQ. Why isn't a COG just, say, the enemy's main tank factory or their command bunker? Because those are just manifestations of power.
The real COG might be intangible.
Often it is. It could be the enemy leader's popular support, the ideological commitment of their fighters, the unity of their political coalition, the population's will to resist, even external support they rely on.
And if you misidentify the COG,
The whole operational design gets warped. You might spend months destroying bridges and ammo dumps, physical targets, but if the enemy's COG is actually the unwavering support of the local population fueled by a powerful ideology, your military successes won't translate into strategic victory. You're attacking symptoms, not the disease. Design is about finding that critical vulnerability, physical or moral, that will cripple the enemy system.
let's bring Cargill 1999 back in here. How did the operational design evolve during that conflict, moving beyond just tactical assaults?
Well, as we discussed, the initial tactical focus was very direct recapture the heights, but the operational design adapted. Commanders and planners realized that taking every single peak head-on would be incredibly costly and slow.
So the design shifted.
It shifted towards attacking the enemy system. Instead of just focusing on the soldiers on the peaks, the design began targeting their ability to sustain those positions. This meant using artillery and air power, coordinated across different sectors, to hit their supply lines, choke points on the ridge lines, and command posts further back.
So moving from attack every tactical objective to dislocate the enemy's operational system, make it impossible for them to stay there.
Exactly. It's less about trading every soldier and more about making their entire position strategically untenable by cutting off their logistics and applying relentless pressure from multiple angles. It showed adaptive design logic, realizing that indirect approaches, targeting systemic vulnerabilities, could achieve the strategic aim, restoring the line of control, more effectively and perhaps even faster than just pure tactical assaults.
So the real power of operational art seems to be creating that coherence, making sure all the tactical actions are pulling in the same direction, timed and sequenced correctly to achieve something bigger, and doing it efficiently.
Coherence and economy of effort. That's it. It's about fighting smart, not just hard, using intellect to magnify the effect of the force you have.
Okay, we've gone from the soldier's judgment in the foxhole up through the operational headquarters designing the campaign. Now we need to climb higher, up to the national level, the cabinet table. This is where tactical information gets distilled into strategic decisions, and military action has to be translated into political language. Hashtag 3.1 information compression and fidelity.
Yeah, this transition is critical. Think about the flow of information. As data travels up the chain from the tactical edge, it inevitably gets compressed.
Meaning simplified, summarized.
Exactly. Abstracted, filtered, details get stripped out. A complex, confusing firefight with ambiguous outcomes might become a simple line item. Contact report, Sector Charlie, 2KIA, 3WIA, enemy losses unknown. By the time it reaches the top, it might just be a single bullet point on a slide.
And the reverse happens coming down. Strategic intent from the top expands into detailed orders.
Right. A broad strategic directive, increased pressure on enemy logistics, gets broken down into specific operational tasks, then tactical missions for individual units, right down to patrol routes and fire missions. The sheer volume of raw data at the bottom that needs to be managed, interpreted, and then synthesized upwards is immense.
The big danger here, according to the sources, is cognitive distortion, isn't it? When that compression becomes oversimplification.
That's the key risk. Ground truth at the tactical level is almost always messy, uncertain, full of nuance. By the time that information reaches the senior political leadership, a lot of that vital context can be lost. Decisions might then be made based on incomplete, sometimes overly optimistic, or even sanitized data.
And even with all the fancy C4I systems we have now, things like ACCCS or IACCS in the Indian context, which automate data flow, that doesn't eliminate the risk.
Not at all. Those systems, ACCCS, Automated Command and Control Communication System, and IACCS, Integrated Air Command and Control System, they're powerful tools for moving data faster, speeding up information sharing, and orders dissemination. They improve efficiency.
But they don't improve judgment.
They don't automate judgment or understanding. The human element, the staff officer interpreting the data, the commander weighing the options, remains the crucial interface, and potentially the single point of failure. Only a human can really grasp the potential political fallout, the ethical implications, the risk of unintended escalation that might be completely invisible to an algorithm processing sensor feeds.
So the role of the staff officer, bridging those levels, is critical. They have to be custodians of coherence.
Absolutely. They have to ensure that the tactical reality, with all its messiness, is represented accurately enough for good strategic decisions, and that strategic intent is translated downwards without losing its core purpose. They need to keep the policy significance tied to the military jargon. Hashtag tag 3.2 civil military synergy in strategic decision.
At that highest level, decision-making isn't ad hoc. It's institutionalized, involving complex structures. In India, for example, how does that interaction between political and military leadership actually work?
It's carefully structured to try and ensure synergy and balance expertise. You have the Cabinet Committee on Security, CCS, typically chaired by the Prime Minister, which makes the ultimate policy decisions on national security matters.
And they're advised by?
They're advised by senior officials and committees. Key among them are the Chiefs of Staff Committee, COSC, comprising the heads of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, often with the Chief of Defense Staff, CDS, acting as the permanent chairman. Then you have advisory bodies like the National Security Council, NSC, and its Secretariat, and the Integrated Defense Staff, IDS, which aims to foster jointness and provide integrated military advice.
This setup seems designed to bridge two different worlds, two different ways of thinking that the sources highlight.
Yes, it forces an interaction between political logic and military logic, and they often prioritize different things.
How so?
Well, political logic is often focused on things like long-term legitimacy, public opinion, economic constraints, diplomatic relationships, the sustainability of an operation, and balancing security needs against other domestic priorities.
Whereas military logic.
Military logic tends to prioritize clarity of objectives, speed of execution, efficiency of resource use, achieving decisive results, minimizing own casualties, and often pushes for maximum force application to achieve the military objective quickly.
So the senior military officer briefing the CCS has a really tough translation job. They can't just talk tactics or weapon systems.
No, they have to translate military requirements into policy implications. For instance, a request for a new long-range missile system isn't just about its technical specs. It has to be framed in terms of policy. This capability enhances our deterrence posture, provides options for calibrated response, strengthens our negotiating position, and signals resolve without immediate escalation.
It's a very fine line to walk. This must be where that old saying comes from.
The soldier must understand politics without being political. Exactly. They need to understand the political context and consequences of military actions and advise honestly on the operational feasibility and risks of political choices. But they must do so without letting personal political views or inter-service rivalries color their professional military advice.
Can you give a quick example of where that tension might play out?
Sure. Imagine planning a retaliatory strike after a provocation. Pure military logic might suggest hitting the most valuable enemy military target deep inside their territory for maximum impact, maximum zeal.
But political logic might say.
Political logic, Zweck, might push for a different target, one that is clearly linked to the provocation, demonstrably proportional, perhaps closer to the border, executed in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and allows the government to frame it internationally as a legitimate act of self-defense, thereby controlling escalation and managing diplomatic fallout. The military advisor has to present options that weigh these political factors, not just offer the most effective military option in isolation. That translation is absolutely key. Hashtag tag 3.3 case studies in operational translation.
And this skill, translating military action into political meaning, it applies even outside of combat, right? Like in humanitarian operations. Let's look at Operation Rahat, the evacuation from Yemen in 2015.
Operation Rahat is a fascinating case study. It's a perfect example of operational art applied in a really high-risk, complex, but non-combat situation, a non-combatant evacuation operation, or NEO.
What was the strategic goal there?
Purely diplomatic and humanitarian. The ZWEC was to safely evacuate Indian citizens and also citizens of many other countries who asked for help from a collapsing state. Doing this successfully would also significantly boost India's reputation as a capable and responsible global actor.
And this strategic goal had to be linked directly to tactical operations on the ground and at sea.
Flawlessly linked. It required incredible joint coordination, the Indian Navy providing ships as stable platforms offshore, the Indian Air Force flying transport aircraft into contested airfields, and the Ministry of External Affairs, MEA, handling the complex diplomatic negotiations for safe passage and coordinating with people on the ground.
So the operational framework was crucial. Defining pickup points, safe corridors, timing.
Absolutely. Defining the safe windows for people to reach the port city of Azir, securing the airfield when possible, coordinating ship movements with aircraft landings, all while dealing with multiple warring factions on the ground. The approach used a sort of maritime anchored corridor.
What's really interesting here is comparing Rahat, a humanitarian op, with, say, urban combat. The underlying logic seems the same.
That's the key insight, the logic of operational art, understanding the intent, why, crafting an approach, how, structuring it with a framework, where, when, and adapting through a process that remains constant whether the mission is combat or non-combat. Rahat needed immense tactical discipline, precision execution, jointness, and huge political sensitivity. The result: thousands evacuated safely, 0 casualties in the operation itself, and a major strategic win for India's soft power and credibility.
Okay, now for a very different example, but one that also highlights this translation of operational results into strategic narrative. The Balakot strike in 2019.
Balakot is maybe the prime example of this dual translation in recent memory. Tactically, it was a precision airstrike targeting alleged terrorist infrastructure deep inside Pakistan.
Executed by the IAF.
Right. But strategically, it was designed and presented as a very carefully calibrated signal, a form of deterrent communication. The absolute key here was executing the operation within very specific, self-imposed thresholds.
Thresholds designed to control escalation.
Precisely. Those thresholds were critical for the narrative. They involved, reportedly, targeting a non-military site associated with a specific terrorist group, using precision munitions to minimize any collateral damage, conducting the strike quickly, and crucially, framing the entire operation immediately and consistently.
How was it framed?
As a non-military preemptive action, specifically targeting terrorist infrastructure, driven by credible intelligence of an imminent attack. It was explicitly not framed as an act of war against the state of Pakistan or its military. This framing was vital for managing international reactions and controlling the escalation ladder.
So the narrative was as important as the strike itself. Narrative discipline achieved what just dropping bombs couldn't.
You could absolutely argue that. The flow of information up to the CCS, the pre-planned communication strategy, the immediate public statements, all of it was designed to shape the perception of the event. The Integrated Defense Staff, IDS, would have played a key role here, ensuring the military facts aligned perfectly with the diplomatic messaging being pushed out by the MEA. It's like Clausewitz in reverse. Strategic communication becomes the continuation of operations by narrative means. Controlling the story can be as important as controlling the airspace.
Okay, we've reached the summit, the top of the command hierarchy. Strategy. This is where the ultimate why is decided, where political purpose gets defined, and where national resources are allocated. Hashtag 4.1 strategy and the primacy of purpose.
Strategy really is the ultimate intellectual game. It's the art and science, perhaps, of translating that overarching political purpose into effective military power and other forms of national power. It sits right between the highest level policy, the ultimate ends the nation seeks, and the operational ways and means used to achieve them.
And the sources bring us back to the classics here, particularly Clausewitz, his famous line,
War is merely the continuation of policy by other means. It sounds simple, but it establishes the absolute non-negotiable hierarchy.
which is,
That the political aim, what Clausewitz called the Zweck, must always govern the military objective, the Ziel. The military objective, like capturing a city or destroying an enemy army, is never an end in itself. It only has value if it serves the larger political purpose.
so if the military objective starts driving the train, regardless of the political cost or consequences.
That's strategic drift. That's when military action becomes detached from its political purpose, potentially leading to Pyrrhic victories or even strategic defeat despite tactical success. Strategy exists precisely to ensure the military effort remains subordinate to and advances the political Zweck.
This idea directly underpins what the sources call the primacy of purpose. Without a clearly defined political purpose, planning is just activity.
It risks becoming arbitrary activity. Without purpose, how do you adapt intelligently? How do you measure success meaningfully? How do you allocate scarce resources effectively? Strategy provides the intellectual discipline needed to define what success looks like, and equally importantly, what failure looks like before you commit blood and treasure.
Strategy is often visualized using that concept of a triad, right? A balance between ends, ways, and means. How do the sources explain this?
Yeah, the ends, ways, means framework is a fundamental tool for checking if a strategy is actually viable. It forces you to align three things.
First, the ends.
The desired political outcomes. What does the nation ultimately want to achieve? Security, prosperity, influence, regime change, status quo. These are the political goals.
Second, the ways.
These are the strategic concepts or methods you plan to use to achieve those ends. How are you going to do it? Through deterrence, compellence, economic pressure, alliance building, limited war, massive retaliation. These are the conceptual approaches.
And third, the means.
These are the actual resources you have available to execute the ways and achieve the ends. This includes military forces, troops, ships, planes, economic resources, money, industry, diplomatic clout, intelligence assets, national will, technological edge, everything you can bring to bear.
And strategic imbalance happens when these three legs of the stool are out of whack.
Exactly. That's where strategies fail. If you set incredibly ambitious ends, say, achieve regional hegemony, but you only have limited muses, means a small budget, outdated forces, and your chosen ways are unrealistic, like expecting a quick, decisive victory against a peer competitor, then your strategy is unbalanced. It's a recipe for failure.
So the strategist's job is often about forcing difficult choices.
Often, yes. It involves advocating for more means resources, developing smarter ways, concepts, or, sometimes the hardest part, persuading the political leadership to scale back the ends to match what's realistically achievable with the available ways and means. Finding that sustainable balance is the core task. Hashtag 4.3, applying purpose to India's strategic challenges.
This need for clarity of purpose and strategic balance becomes incredibly stark when you apply it to real-world complex challenges. Like India's often discussed two-front security scenario involving China and Pakistan.
Absolutely. If the strategic purpose, the Zweck, is defined simply as being able to fight and decisively win simultaneous conventional wars on both fronts, well, the sources strongly suggest that's likely unachievable given realistic resource constraints.
Pursuing that goal might lead to strategic overstretch. spending vast sums without actually achieving true security.
It risks exactly that. Trying to match both adversaries conventionally, everywhere, all the time, could demand unsustainable levels of defense spending, potentially crippling the economy and neglecting other vital national priorities.
So a purpose-driven strategy needs to reframe the problem.
Yeah.
Move away from just winning in the conventional sense.
It suggests reframing the purpose towards something like comprehensive deterrence. The goal shifts. It's not necessarily about achieving decisive military victory everywhere, but about convincing both potential adversaries that any aggression against India would be prohibitively costly and ultimately strategically futile for them.
So it's about making the price of admission too high, deterring them from starting anything.
Precisely. This accepts the reality that India might not be able to achieve absolute military dominance on both fronts simultaneously, but it can develop capabilities and strategies leveraging geography, technology, alliances, nuclear deterrence, and graduated response options to make aggression an unacceptably bad gamble for any potential aggressor. It's a shift in mindset from pure war winning to strategic cost imposition.
And this clarity of strategic purpose should then directly drive military modernization, right? To avoid just buying, well, a bit of everything.
Yes, it's meant to prevent acquiring what the sources call a potpourri of systems. That's the danger when modernization isn't guided by a clear strategic purpose. You end up with different services buying platforms based on their own preferences or historical momentum, or reacting to the latest shiny object without a coherent, integrated plan linked to national strategy.
Which leads to wasted resources, integration problems.
Massive inefficiencies, duplication, systems that can't talk to each other, and capabilities that don't actually address the most critical strategic threats.
Okay, let's test this with a couple of examples.
Yeah.
If the primary strategic purpose is defined as deterring China along the northern borders,
And then your modernization priorities become clear. You invest heavily in high-altitude capabilities, specialized mountain troops, tunnels, and all-weather roads for rapid deployment, robust ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance overlooking the plateau, long-range precision fires suitable for mountain terrain, maybe strengthening air defenses and air power projection in the region.
but if the main strategic purpose shifts, say, to ensuring maritime security in the Indian Ocean region,
Then the priorities change dramatically. You focus on expanding the Navy's reach and endurance. That means more long-range maritime patrol aircraft like the P-8Is, a larger and more capable submarine fleet, strengthening island territories as strategic outposts, developing better maritime domain awareness, and potentially investing in carrier battle groups or sea denial capabilities. The purpose dictates the priorities.
the real danger then is trying to maximize everything simultaneously, trying to be number one in every possible domain against every potential threat.
That's the trap of simultaneous maximization. And it connects implicitly to Paul Kennedy's famous thesis about great power decline through imperial overstretch. If a nation tries to match China conventionally, maintain clear superiority over Pakistan, build a world-class blue water navy, achieve complete self-reliance in defense production, and fund ambitious domestic development and social programs, something has to give. You risk strategic exhaustion.
So strategy, guided by purpose, provides the essential discipline.
It provides the intellectual discipline to make tough choices, prioritize ruthlessly, align resources with realistic goals, and ensure that the nation's military power actually serves its vital political interests without bankrupting the state. It's about creating coherence between ambition and capacity.
Okay, we've traced the importance of human judgment all the way up the chain. But the future is here, or at least arriving fast, with artificial intelligence becoming more integrated into military systems. How does this change things? How do we ensure human judgment stays in charge when machines can analyze and recommend actions faster than we can think? Hashtag 5.1, the cognitive imperative in the AI age.
This is maybe the most critical challenge discussed in the source material, and they make a pretty stark point. In an age where AI can retrieve and process information almost instantly, education systems based primarily on recall memory testing become obsolete.
So testing people on what they remember is pointless if a machine remembers everything.
Largely, yes. We need to stop prioritizing the testing of something machines inherently do better storing and retrieving vast amounts of data and focus intensely on cultivating what humans do uniquely. Critical reasoning, ethical evaluation, creative problem solving, understanding context, and exercising judgment under uncertainty.
This brings us back to that distinction you mentioned at the start, digital fluency versus epistemic fluency.
Exactly. Digital fluency is necessary, of course. That's just being comfortable using the digital tools, understanding the systems, operating the software. You need that.
But it's not enough.
Not nearly enough. Real operational success, especially in the future, will depend much more on epistemic fluency. This is a deeper cognitive skill. It's the disciplined ability to justify your knowledge, to evaluate the quality and source of information, and crucially, to act decisively based on reasoned understanding, especially when the information is incomplete or ambiguous.
So digital fluency is knowing how to use the tool. Epistemic fluency is knowing whether and why to trust the tool's output.
That's a great way to put it. It's about understanding the how we know what we know. The sources actually connect this to classical philosophy, specifically mentioning the Nyaya school of Indian logic.
How does that connect?
Nyaya philosophy deeply explored the nature of knowledge, prama, and defined it essentially as justified true belief. The emphasis is on the justification, prama, the valid means by which knowledge is acquired and verified. An epistemically fluent commander doesn't just accept the AI's recommendation, they implicitly ask, what's the justification? What are the underlying assumptions? How confident are we in this data?
This has huge implications for military education then. Professional military education, PME, needs a fundamental shift.
It really does. PME has to move away from simply teaching doctrine as fact and testing recall and needs to become an incubator for reasoning skills.
How do you do that?
By focusing on inquiry-based learning, using structured critical thinking questions, CTQs, complex simulations, ethical dilemmas, and performance-based assessments where officers have to argue for their chosen course of action, justify their reasoning, and design solutions to novel problems, not just recite doctrinal answers.
Can you paint a picture? A scenario where digital fluency alone fails, but epistemic fluency wins.
Okay, imagine this. You have a sophisticated AI-driven sensor fusion system peak digital fluency. It analyzes masses of data troop movements, comms, intercepts, social media chatter, and spits out a conclusion. 95% probability of major enemy attack on the southern flank within 12 hours.
The digitally fluent commander acts immediately, moves reserves south.
Probably. They trust the sophisticated system, but the commander with epistemic fluency pauses. They ask critical questions. Does this align with the enemy's known doctrine and their likely political goals? It's whack. What's the confidence level of the inputs feeding this algorithm? Could this be a deception? Are we seeing indicators of cognitive warfare designed to make us react this way?
They question the justification, the prama.
Exactly. By questioning the basis of the AI's conclusion, the epistemically fluent commander might recognize anomalies, might consider the possibility of spoof data or a deliberate feint, and might decide not to commit reserves based solely on the algorithm's high probability. They might hold forces back, maybe increase reconnaissance elsewhere, and ultimately defeat the real enemy attack when it comes somewhere unexpected. Their judgment, their questioning, overrides the machine's certainty. Hashtag tag 5.2 AI as the cognitive partner, IMGPT.
So AI isn't the enemy of judgment, but it needs to be treated as a tool, a partner, not an oracle. The sources actually propose a concept for this, the Indian military GPT, IMGPT.
Yes, envisioned as a sovereign, secure, large language model, specifically fine-tuned on Indian military doctrine, history, and strategic context. The crucial distinction they make is that it's designed as a cognitive partner, not an automated commander.
Its purpose is to augment human intellect, not replace it.
Precisely. To handle the data deluge, perform rapid analysis, suggest options, highlight risks, freeing up the human commander's limited cognitive bandwidth to focus on the things only humans can do. Ethical judgment, understanding intent, building trust, leading people.
What specific roles do the sources see for something like IMGPT, particularly in training and education?
They outline several key applications that could really accelerate learning and improve decision-making. One, as a training tutor. Imagine an officer studying operational art. They could ask IMGPT, explain the concept of cog analysis using examples from the 1971 war, and get an instant, contextually relevant explanation with historical data far faster than searching through manuals. It's like having an infinitely patient, knowledgeable instructor on call 24/7. Two, as a simulation controller. In war games, IMGPT could play the adversary, the red cell, but not just a scripted enemy. It could generate highly adaptive, intelligent, and unpredictable enemy plans based on its understanding of Blue Force doctrine, past mistakes, and even the current commander's known biases, providing a much more challenging and realistic training experience. 3. as a critique engine. A student officer prepares an operational plan. They could feed it to IMGPT, which could then analyze it against doctrinal principles, check the logistical calculations, identify logical flaws in the reasoning, flag potential risks or unaddressed assumptions in the PMESI analysis, maybe even run quick simulations to stress test the plan. It provides instant, detailed feedback.
Wow, that sounds incredibly powerful, like having a supercharged think tank and sparring partner rolled into one. But it brings us right back to the ethics. Human leadership has to remain the moral filter.
Absolutely non-negotiable. The sources are adamant. AI systems used in the military, especially those involved in targeting or lethal decision-making, must be explainable, auditable, and retain meaningful human control.
Meaning the commander can't just say, the AI recommended it.
No, they need to understand why the AI recommended it, what data did it use, what assumptions did it make, what objectives was it optimizing for, because the AI might optimize for pure military efficiency or speed or minimizing risk to equipment.
But the human commander is responsible for ensuring the action aligns with the rules of engagement, with international law, with the overall political purpose, ZWEC, and with basic human morality.
Exactly. The ultimate CTQ here, as absed in the sources, is stark. What ethical boundaries must guide autonomous systems in lethal operations? The commander needs the epistemic fluency and the moral courage to sometimes reject the algorithm's optimal solution if it violates those fundamental human-centric principles. That ability to say no to the machine based on judgment is the essence of future command. So, putting it all together, the sources conclude that the decisive factor for future strategic success isn't just having smart commanders or smart machines, it's having an institution that can learn faster and more effectively than its adversaries. Institutional learning becomes strategy.
And doctrine isn't a static rulebook.
Not at all. It has to be viewed as a living argument between experience and anticipation. It captures the best current understanding based on past experience, but it must constantly adapt based on new lessons and anticipated future challenges.
How does an institution actually do that? How do you turn messy battlefield experience into updated, useful doctrine? The sources outline a specific cycle for this.
Yes, they describe a 6-stage doctrinal learning cycle. It's the organizational engine for ensuring feedback leads to adaptation, preventing the military from perpetually fighting the last war.
Okay, let's walk through the stages. Stage 1.
1. Operations and experience. This is where it starts the raw data collection from real-world missions, major exercises, conflicts, even peacekeeping deployments. Gathering observations, reports, initial lessons learned, it's often messy, subjective, incomplete.
Then stage 2. Make sense of the mess.
2. Reflection and after-action review, AAR. This is crucial. Structured debriefs, analysis, critical reflection. The sources emphasize a key mindset shift here. Error is treated as a hypothesis. Instead of blaming individuals for failures, the institution analyzes failures as potential evidence that the existing doctrine or training, the hypothesis, might be flawed and needs reevaluation.
Okay, so you've got analyzed lessons.
Yeah.
Stage 3.
3. Education and conceptual integration. This is where PME institutions play a vital role. They take these synthesized lessons from the AARs and integrate them into the curriculum. Through seminars, research, updated case studies, and wargaming, they test these new insights against established theory and explore their broader implications.
So the lessons get pressure tested intellectually. Stage 4.
4. Doctrine development and validation. Once lessons are validated and concepts refined through the PME process, specialized doctrine writing teams, ideally joint or tri-service, consolidate these insights into revised official publications, manuals, handbooks, tactical procedures. This formalizes the change.
And you have to get it out to the force. Stage 5.
5. Application and dissemination. The updated doctrine immediately feeds into new training programs, syllabi for courses, operational planning guidance, and field exercises. The goal is to push the new knowledge and methods throughout the entire force structure as quickly as possible.
And the final stage closes the loop.
6. Institutional adaptation. The cycle doesn't really end. The institution continuously reevaluates the effectiveness of the new doctrine in light of evolving threats, new technologies, changing geopolitical realities, and feedback from its application. This assessment then feeds back into stage 1, starting the process anew. It's a continuous loop of learning and refinement.
That cycle seems designed to create genuinely adaptive doctrine, ensuring the organization learns from mistakes and anticipates change.
That's the goal, to learn faster than the environment changes, because in the 21st century, adaptability is strategic superiority.
And looking ahead, the sources point to Doctrinal Horizons 2035, identifying key realities that will demand this rapid learning.
Yes, They highlight 5 converging realities shaping the future battlefield. 1. Multi-domain integration. No longer fighting in stovepipes of land, sea, air, space, cyber, but seamlessly integrating effects across all domains. 2. Cognitive warfare. Recognizing that manipulating perception, undermining trust, and attacking decision-making cycles is becoming a primary warfighting domain itself. 3. Automated battle management. AI will increasingly drive command and control systems for speed and efficiency, but humans must retain governance and ethical oversight. 4. Resilient civil-military fusion. National security demands a whole-of-nation approach, integrating military efforts with civilian infrastructure, industry, and societal resilience. 5. Adaptive doctrine. The need for that living, self-correcting body of knowledge we just discussed, capable of incorporating data and learning at machine speed, but guided by human wisdom.
It seems the entire framework is built to ensure that even as machines get exponentially smarter, the commander's mind schooled in ethics, critical thinking, and adaptive reasoning remains the truly decisive element. Hashtag tag outro.
So we've really covered the whole spectrum today, haven't we? We charted that command continuum right from the tactical level.
Yeah, the Foxhole, defining tactical art, not just as fighting, but as ethical command, disciplined initiative, judgment under pressure.
Then we moved up to operational art, that crucial intellectual bridge, showing how you design campaigns to link those tactical actions coherently to achieve a larger purpose.
And then ascended to the strategic heights, looking at how operational results get compressed and translated into political narrative, and how the clarity of the political purpose, the zweck, must always drive the military objective, the zeal.
And finally, we peered into the future, emphasizing that the critical skill isn't just digital fluency using the tech, but epistemic fluency, the judgment to question the data, understand the justification, and apply human reason, especially when working alongside AI.
The big takeaway for me, distilled from all this doctrine, seems to be that knowledge itself isn't enough. Knowing facts doesn't guarantee success.
No, it's learning, institutional learning, and individual learning. The real test of mastery, particularly at the operational level, isn't how elegant the first plan is. It's how quickly and effectively the commander and the organization can learn and adapt when that plan inevitably meets reality. Learning faster than the environment changes. That's the key.
And that tension between the speed of machines and the reflective nature of human judgment leaves us with our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to ponder.
In that future, where an AI can analyze a situation and recommend a course of action almost instantly, faster than any human possibly could, what is the commander's paramount ethical obligation?
Is it to seize the advantage of speed, to act immediately on the algorithm's recommendation? Or is it to deliberately pause, to engage that slower, non-algorithmic, uniquely human moral filter, to demand justification, to think again, even if it means sacrificing tempo?
That decision, that moment of choosing considered judgment over raw speed, even under pressure, that really feels like the defining challenge, the frontier of future command.
Something to definitely think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the complex architecture of modern military command.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.